So this first paper, we had this first of two papers will talk about research looking at how long distance hikers leverage technology and social media, especially for on the trail. And this was written in collaboration with Mike, Tim, and Scott, which I think all of them are here in the call. So this work falls under the larger umbrella of Tech on the Trail initiative, where we've worked for years in aiming to understand and develop new technologies for use, especially in conditions of scarcity. So previously, we've worked with stakeholders on the trail beyond just hikers in trying to understand their techniques, and then we've explored approaches that takes inter-community collaboration and inter-community tension into account. Currently, we're also working with the through hikers. Those are people who hike from end to end and looking at what digital artifacts that they generate on the trail and what stories they told. This work, we focus specifically on social media use and focus specifically on the through hiker community on Reddit as a starting point to understand what their tech needs are and the tech use while on the trail. We found Reddit specifically to be popular because and it has a significant community, and throughout this paper, I'll kind of outline why this is so. Previously I mentioned here that through hikers are end-to-end hikers. They are a very unique community because unlike other communities, it involves a long-term preparation, life-altering decisions, and their nature by itself means that while they're away from normal day-to-day life, they tend to want to be away from technology as well, and yet they still maintain connection to their community even while away, while on the trail. Their also sense of identity also evolves as they are on the hike. So what they ask and what they contribute to before they go on the hike and versus what they contribute while on the hike and post-hike is also different. And so this sense of evolving community while being away, while still being connected is very interesting and makes them very interesting as far as for research is concerned. So I'll give a brief overview of the context of what we work, where we fit. So there's a robust through hiking community on Reddit. The biggest ones are the three trail that makes the Triple Crown trails in the US. This is the most popular is the Appalachian Trail, which spans from Georgia in the south to Maine in the north. You have the Pacific Crest Trail, which spans from California in the south to Washington in the north. And then you have the Continental Divide Trail that spans from New Mexico in the south to Montana in the north. We liked Appalachian Trail specifically because it had the biggest community on Reddit, and so it had the most discussions in there. And also we are very close as Virginia Tech to the trail itself, where we are about 20 to 35 minutes to the closest trailhead on the trail. Trail season is also important, I want to mention here. So typically with the Appalachian Trail, the trail season begins around mid-February and beginning of April, where the conditions in Georgia have become a little mild, so you can start hiking. Whereas some people can also hike from Maine to Georgia, but they will have to start around July. This is when the Baxter National Park, which is the end point of the Appalachian Trail in the north, opens to the public. So it's important for us to understand the trail season and what that influences in how they communicate on the trail. Weight is also important for through hikers because you're carrying essentially your whole life in your back. Weight is important, and that has implications about the technology that they use and what they carry and the decisions that they make with that. All of these are important and kind of bring a little bit of context into what we talk about in this work. So when trying to position the through hiking community, they kind of fit in all and none at the same time. So previous research in HCI in general, as an overview, there's research that consider online communities which look at community norms, role formation, individual contributions. There's also research that consider geographical communities and especially communities that form around for instance, niche places like cafes. And then what the effect that technology has in disrupting and providing new opportunities for these communities in geographical places. There's also research, especially there's a really nice corpus of research within Virginia Tech that looks at hybrid communities, how online activities are facilitated for offline interactions. For example, if people who are working with for voting, for instance, A community in a geographical community can use online resources to organize online activities that have implications on the physical area. Through hikers community encompass all of that, but they don't quite fit, especially with the idea of geography, because the trail itself is geographically bounded. It's going from Georgia to Maine, while at the same time, the community itself is not quite bounded by the geography itself, but by their interest in it. So it became very interesting to see how this interesting community has implications on the general research and community and what new thing we learn about this community. They're also interesting because a lot of the time the through hikers have long stretches of isolation while on the trail. They're by themselves just hiking, trudging north or south, depending on how they are, with some pocketness of togetherness, both on the trail and online. So all of this is very interesting to consider. Whoops. With that, the theoretical approach that we use for this is we wanted to consider how best to explore the conundrum of the through hikers being away but still maintaining connection to the online community, and how this sense of community manifests. So we chose a sense of community theory, which was proposed in the 70s, that has the 4 characteristics that I have to the right. We go a little bit more into details in the paper, and I'll direct you to that for that. But basically, what it was designed to be, it was initially used to describe the characteristics within a physical community and what made that community successful. We wanted to apply this to this interesting community, this online but evolving community, to see how best the sense of community theory maps to this, and also consider. We also lectured over. We considered sense of community over other theories that consider community, such as sense of virtual communities, and we go into detail about why this is so in the paper. And so it allowed us to explore the motivation, the reason for the technology, the motivation for going on the trail, and it allows us to explore this aspect of evolving community that I'll mention next. So in our approach, we used the Reddit corpus. It was free and available, and we looked at the trail season between 2016 and 2018. So we used both, we used the Appalachian, because of the significant hikers communities on Reddit. And Reddit is also useful here for one interesting reason. We considered other forums, for instance, that through hikers use for preparation and reporting on their trail progress. And we found Reddit to be useful because typically they stick around. Again, we chose the Appalachian Trail because of the significant community there. So compared 75,000 members compared to 3,000 members in the Continental Divide Trail. And then based on that, we then took all the comments, posts, and metadata associated with each post between the period that we worked on. I want to mention here that, so the post itself, the comments are the comments that mentioned that people comment under the post. The metadata took between the date, the date that was posted, the person who posted it, and the number of comments that were in there, and the upvotes. But what I want to especially mention is we wanted to isolate the through hikers from the through hiking community. So not all the people who post on the Appalachian Trail community are through hikers. So we wanted to isolate the through hikers specifically, and for this one we used the author flare. So Reddit uses this author flare as sort of a tag that can be added to post or username within a subreddit specifically, and they especially used for the through hiking community in this case to identify themselves, to label themselves as through hikers or not. So we looked for all the people who used author flares in the community. So there was 7,000 plus of them. And then from those number of users who had author flares, we isolated 230 self-described through hikers based on their flares. So this is an example that I have here where you have a name and then the trail name, which is Bolt, the direction that they completed their through hike, which is northbound. By that, they can also use GAME, which meant that they went from Georgia to Maine, which has the same connotation, northbound, and the year that they completed. So we only use the number of through hikers who specified the year that they completed the hike, if it was between 2016 and 2018, and we ended up with 119 of those. And then based on those, we split their discussions based on whether it was posted pre-hike, on-hike, and post-hike. And we use this two topic modeling approaches to understand the discussions that are happening at each stage of their hike. So we especially liked latent direct allocation was very useful in analyzing the discussion in the entire subreddit. The non-negative metric of factorization was especially useful to understand the through hikers at every aspect of their trail. We just picked one that had was more coherent. And so we looked at the term weighting, what is the importance of terms. We used the TF-IDF to do that, and then we generated topic descriptors for each of the terms that we had, and then based on that we computed the topic coherence, and then the most coherent, the topic modeling that had the best coherence, that's the one that we picked for each of the sections. So the general findings are like fourfold. I'll spend more time on the latter than the previous ones, but we wanted to understand the general idea of what is being talked by the trail, which it was not very surprising. Trail logistics was the most important one, and maintaining trail community was a second one. We also wanted to understand trail season influence on the community discussion, just to find out whether it's true that northbound is more interesting than southbound, or most people use northbound or not, and if whether all the community discussions just generate within that time, and then the rest of the time the community is silent. And then what technology is being used by the trail, given the importance of weight, and then the hiker topics and how the topics evolve as the hiker is going through the trail, and what this means in the sense of community. So I will briefly talk about the two. We found that yes, there are, especially the through hikers who are registered on the trail, do have a lot of increased activity while on the trail, especially beginning of the northbound season. But this did not really translate to the general community. So yes, there was a slight increase in activity, but it was not significant in the community at large. As far as technology use, it was also not surprising. Literally all the through hikers reported taking their phones with them. We also noticed the emergency beacon for this, which was also not surprising. There was just one person who took a laptop with them on the trail, so that was interesting. Also for watches, there was 32 hikers reported taking watches with them, and outdoor smartwatches, which are the rugged smartwatches, were the most popular over things like smartwatches. And then we also wanted, just in case, wanted to see what phone types they like, and Apple seemed to be very popular. Not for any reason, but just to fit our curiosity about that. This was important for us to figure out whether the activity, after isolating stages, we wanted to ascertain the level of activity, if any, at each stage of the hike. And I'll talk about specific next, but here we just wanted to make sure that yes, the through hikers that we identified do have activities before, during, and after in all the hike stages. Whereas the on-hike discussion is a little low compared to the rest of them, it's still there, which is important for us to ascertain the topics. So based on the stage of the hike they were, we top words are arranged according to term weight, and then we labeled the through hike depending on the stages, generally based on what all these topics are based on. So pre-hikers tended to be researchers. They used the community, the Reddit community, to ask questions about what they were taking, to report when they're going on the hike, and find community with other people who are also undergoing the through hike. So someone said, I'm booking my flight to Atlanta for March 7th. Someone said, I'm preparing, did a 70-mile training hike, and so on. On hike, they're the sojourners. These are the people who typically reported. They're very useful in reporting trail conditions because they're the people who were on the trail. So, and both the trail condition, right, but also their own condition changing while on the trail. So for example, someone said, I have become a different person on this hike, or maybe I'm just becoming me. Whereas there's an idea of trail blues, which is especially significant when the hikers reach the Virginia part of the Appalachian Trail. It's not physically challenging, but it's very mentally challenging. So you have a hiker here who said, I was very lonely. I felt like the hike was doing more harm than good at that point. This hike was reporting quitting while in Virginia section of the trail. The post-hiker experts, these are the people who leverage their expertise both in helping out the people who are ongoing, the researchers, to answer questions that they have, and also to kind of maintain the community that they had. So I have all the memories of the trail. I just can't imagine that I actually did it. And so trail nostalgia is commiserating with other through hikers who had completed their hike and they missed the trail and that kind of thing. This is especially prevalent now with when the trail is being closed. This trail nostalgia is the paramount topic in the Appalachian Trail. So how did they fit in how did all these topics fit in the sense of community? We go a little bit more into detail in the paper. I just wanted to highlight a few for each level at each stage of the topic. So to remind you that the characteristics of the sense of community is membership, influence, fulfillment of needs, and shared emotional connection. At the pre-hike level, the needs fulfillment was the most paramount sense that we found, the sense of community, because this is where the hikers solicit expertise from other people and gain feedback about their own preparation. Influence was absent in the pre-hike topic, but it emerges in the on-hike topics, because this is where because as updaters, there's a role shift between asking questions and reporting about what is happening on the trail, and this is where the sense of influence starts to increase. Fulfillment and need is absent at this stage, and this is where we hypothesize that because the hikers are getting their fulfillment and needs on the trail itself instead of the online community, this is absent from the online discussions that they have. And then finally, the post-hike, there was an even distribution of all the topics. And we go, again, I'll put you to the paper to do that. I'll just mention here very briefly and then end. So here is where everything fits. We try to fit all the topics in the different characteristics of the sense of community theory. And as I can say, or I mentioned before, influence is absent and pre-hike, fulfillment is need is absent on on-hike. This is also useful to also see both using the column, seeing what is happening with the pre-hike. You can consider the hike stages in isolations, or the sense of community characteristics as you go on. But it was very useful to see how all at each stage of the hike, how this sense of community evolved. Sometimes, not all the time. So the sense of community evolved as the hikers evolved as well. This has beyond the implication on the sense of community theory. We find that the many factors that shape geographical communities and hybrid communities map well to online communities on the trail. And then while other prior research provide observations that such need exist, we observe that the needs change over time, and that a good theoretical framework was one that allows us allows the hiker or the community member to evolve as the community itself evolved. And so the sense of community itself is not a static concept, and it's an evolving concept. And we go into more into detail in the paper about how best we can leverage that. One last thing I'll mention here is the fact that the sense of community theory worked really well. We didn't need to add any other characteristic to the sense of community framework itself. It worked really well as a framework, and we feel like it's a really good one to. Is any other community that is considered a really good one to do that. And that's it for this part of the talk.